Good afternoon. It's Monday, June 7th. We are beginning the meeting for the Human Services Committee. We have a quorum, so I'm calling this meeting to order. I apologize for the late start. I want to move HS1, which is approval of minutes for the regular meeting for March 1st, 2021 for action. Is there a second? Second. All right. All those in favor, please have to do a roll call. Do you have to do a roll call, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Braithwaite. I am an aye as well. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right. Next is public comment. We have a comment from Gretchen Brewster. She is on video. Gretchen, if you want to turn your camera on, you can. If not, you can go ahead and start speaking. You'll have 3 minutes. Ms. Brewster, are you there? Gave up on us. All right, we will come back to Ms.
Hi,
Oh,
I'm here.
okay.
I'm here. Hold on. Do you need? Did
do not
just
have to
call
turn on your
me?
camera,
I
but it's
guess
your
I
turn
was
to speak.
walking out of the room. I haven't.
It's your turn to speak.
Hold on. I'm gonna turn on my video. There we go. All right, you're ready to hear from me?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Gretchen Brewster, and I'm here with my exceptionally well-behaved 7-year-old dog, Ivy. She and I together have been very much connected for the last 5.5 years with an incredible bonding and dependence. Several months ago, when our now Alderwoman Claire Kelly was running for office, I raised concerns with Claire about the fact that many outdoor restaurants in Evanston did not allow Ivy and me to join other outside diners. Today, Ivy and I are here to voice our support, so to speak, for the proposed variance to change that reality. Throughout our months of COVID together, Ivy was for me very much a source
Recording in
of
progress.
Hello. Ivy and I were very much a source, she was very much a source of sanity and well-being for me. Living as a single person, like so many other Evanstonians, I found Ivy to be a major source of companionship. We walked many miles together, shared morsels, and learned to communicate on a new level. She grew to rely heavily upon me and me upon her, so much so that she now goes almost everywhere I go. To have the opportunity of having a meal together in the great outdoors would have been such a relief, but the overbearing ordinance saying no dogs allowed forbade that possibility. I have done a fair amount of research on this topic and have learned that we in Evanston would not be in violation of the state law, which in my mind is still open to question. It reads that no pets shall be allowed on the premises of eating or food establishments. Cities and towns like Chicago, Wilmette, and Winnetka have successfully allowed dogs in outdoor dining areas as well as their farmers market for some time. Why is Evanston so far behind? In Paris, I understand there are no restrictions about where people choose to bring their dogs. In addition, as a longtime Evanston taxpayer, I believe the use of our sidewalks is equally mine, as well as for restaurateurs and patrons. Allowing dogs and other pet owners to frequent outdoor dining spots would be a joy to us and our companions and bring added revenue to our city restaurants. What's to be lost? By the way, I bet you my dog Ivy is better behaved than 95% of the present customers. Certainly a lot quieter and very amiable. I urge you to support the passage of this variance and consider the inclusion of allowing dogs to our farmers markets as well.
Ms. Brewster, I
you.
have to have you wrap up. Thank you so much, Ms. Brewster, for your comment. Thanks for waiting for us.
Sure.
Okay, so we have two items that
Oh,
were,
I'm sorry, Chair.
I still have two more comments, Mr.
Oh,
Reed.
okay, I was just adding one more public commenter.
Okay, then that needs to go to the chair. Who's the public commenter? Oh, okay. We have Mr. Patrick Fowler, who is the owner of Firehouse Grill, who's wrote in support of allowing customers to bring dogs on patios, as well as Amy Morton, who is the owner of Found Kitchen, who also supports the ordinance. Do you want to speak at this time, or do you want to speak when your item is up? Okay, so we have, that is it for public comment. We have no items for consideration. There is amendment I'm making to the agenda for public record. So HS1, which is the handle with care discussion, is going to be held over to our next meeting, as well as HS2, which is the Evanston Police Department dashboard update. Those are being held by police request, so they will come back before us next month. And so that brings us to HS3, which is animals at outdoor cafes. Councilmember Kelly made a referral to Human Service Committee to discuss state and local ordinance we currently have disallowing dogs at outdoor cafes. And just for members of the committee, Councilmember Kelly had a couple of supporting documents that she asked me to give to you all. So I sent those to you guys earlier today. If you don't have them, just let me know and I can give them to you now. But you did not have a chance to read them. Okay, so I will send them to you right now. But Councilmember Kelly is here. She wants to speak to this item, and then we'll have discussion.
Thank you very much. So I think this is just a wonderful opportunity we have as we try to support our businesses, our small businesses and our restaurants in the recovery from the pandemic. This can really create a new stream of clientele that's so important right now. And the good news is, according to the IDPH, our staff has contacted them. It is up to the city of Evanston to amend our code to create a variance process that would allow dogs at outdoor dining establishments. Because we have our own, we're one of the few communities that does have our own health department, we can do this. Our IDPH contacts have confirmed that we do not need approval from them to proceed. The variance process, of course, would provide evidence that, and I provided some documents to show from some other cities that have done this in other states where they also have state laws against it, where with your own health department, you can provide the evidence that the health hazards associated with dogs and outdoor dining establishments are mitigated in some way through these variants and these application forms for variance. So I really hope we can move this along swiftly, because the faster we do, the more we can start to encourage more clientele, more to attend restaurants with dogs for those restaurants that would like to apply for such a variance. So I hope we can move it forward for action to City Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. All right, so now this is an item for discussion. If anyone wants to get the discussion started. Councilmember Reed.
I think we've heard from, I've heard from a number of residents, business owners, that this is a proposal that they would support. I guess Director Ogbo, if you want to just give us your side, and then we can ask any questions.
Good day, members of Human Services Committee. Ike Ogbo, Director, Health and Human Services Department. The Evanston Health and Human Services Department, as we all know, is a certified health department, and we are mandated by the Illinois Department of Public Health to enforce food safety codes using the FDA code. And specifically in the FDA code, it disallows animals, particularly dogs, at outdoor cafes or food establishments. Food establishments, according to our ordinance, is also an outdoor cafe, because that becomes an extension of that food facility. Specifically in the FDA code, it does illustrate what you can and can't have at or allow at a restaurant or outdoor cafe. According to the FDA code, what's allowed are fish in aquarium tanks, display tanks, service animals for the disabled, and of course patrol dogs for the police or security agents. And as we know, service animals or animals that are trained specifically for a task for those who are disabled. Comfort animals or emotional animals, unfortunately, do not qualify as do not qualify as service animals. And we did an extensive review of other ordinances of nearby communities to see what they allow and disallow in terms of animals at outdoor cafes or food establishments. I will met, for example, in their ordinance, the bar having dogs at the outdoor cafes. Cook County as a whole, the bars having animals at their outdoor cafe, including Skokie and other nearby municipalities. The exception to this is, of course, Chicago. So we did our research to find out why Chicago has been granted this variant. It comes to be that there is a state law that allows companion dogs, that's any dog that is not a service dog, to be allowed in municipalities that have 1 million or more individuals. So that's why we have that in Chicago. Apart from Chicago, we weren't able to find any other municipalities where stated in their ordinance that they allow dogs. And with Chicago's code, there are a number of stipulations that a restaurant owner will have to meet in order to qualify to have dogs at their restaurants or outdoor cafe. One is that the restaurant owner has to provide what is called a dog-friendly area. Dogs, of course, are not allowed into the interior of the restaurant. It is also the restaurant owner's responsibility to ensure that they are complying with these stipulations and these ordinances regarding allowing dogs at the outdoor cafe, which also means that the dogs have to be on leash at all times, and the restaurant owner's responsibility is to ensure that that actually happens, and the restaurant owner also has the responsibility not to serve an individual at an outdoor cafe if they can't control their dog in that space. So there are a number of stipulations that has to be met in order for dogs to be allowed, particularly in Chicago. I also spoke to our state colleague in regards to dogs being allowed here in Evanston, and although she did state that a variant can be created to allow that, but we also have this state law that states that a municipality with 1 million or more people will be allowed to have outdoor cafe with dogs. So there's some conflicting information here that we need some clarification on, and I'm still waiting on the state to get that thorough assessment of the matter. And if you guys have any questions.
Thank you for that, Director Obo, for that summary. My question is, would we, I'm not sure if it was clear in the memo, were you suggesting that we would lose our certified health department status if we were to create this variance and allow for dogs in outdoor cafes? Is that your?
So from a health department standpoint, we receive a number of grants through the state, and that helps with our operations. We do have a food program that is reviewed every 2 years. Unfortunately, our food program wasn't reviewed last year due to COVID-19. It wouldn't be reviewed for another year, so to speak. So they take a look at how we conduct inspections, and given that dogs are not allowed in restaurants, if that is added to the inspection reports that we have, that would definitely affect our standing during that audit. So because we receive these grants, it might affect our standing, and that's why I included that in the memo.
Okay, so you're unsure as to whether or not it would or would not affect our status as having a certified health department?
Well, if we go ahead and do it without any approval, so to speak, or if there's no variance that we've been talking about, then of course that will affect our standing with the state.
Okay.
But that also needs to be clarified, given if there's a variance that is created and this state law that says a municipality with 1 million people would be allowed to have outdoor cafes. So that needs to be that clarification first before we can proceed.
And then to close out my time, Attorney Brian George, is it your understanding that we have the home rule authority to allow for this variance?
Thank you, Councilmember Reed. So the 1 million exception that's in the Illinois, I only started researching this a few hours ago, so no by
Sure,
means
sure.
complete, but the Illinois statute that allows for the 1 million, municipality with 1 million or more.
Chicago.
Yeah, basically. That reads like an exception to a rule, but I don't see any rule in the Illinois statutes. What I think is happening is that the Illinois Department of Public Health has adopted the FDA food code as part of the Illinois Department of Health's regulations. The food code isn't really law, it isn't federal law, it's more guidance, but it's been adopted by the Illinois Department of Public Health. So, you know, as Mr. Ogbo was just talking about, I do think that the city does have home rule authority, based on my very preliminary
Sure,
research, to do this, but I do think just to be safe, you know, getting the approval
Check with
from
IEPH,
and
yeah.
just doing the variances and everything like that, it would be the safest way to go ahead. But in and of itself, on its own, I don't see any Illinois statute that forbids this.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Director Oakbow? So I, being a dog owner who never takes my dog out to eat, I do support this, and then this vein, I mean, again, with our businesses obviously coming out of COVID-19, I don't want to just go willy-nilly and allow everything, but we've allowed the streets to be cut off, like Roller Principal and all those things, which we hadn't done before, and I imagine some people thought that was going to be a disaster, and it's worked out well, right? So I would like us to move forward on that, even if we just are doing it for this summer. Now, I don't want us to do it in a way that is going to be risky to us as a home, as a municipality, but if we can get some clarity, maybe Mr. George can help with this, if you can get some clarity on kind of the vagueness. If it's code and it's just kind of suggestive, then it seems like we can do it, but if we need to get a variance, if we can get that ball rolling with the variance, and then communicating to our business owners, obviously they don't, allowing them to not want to do it if they don't want to do it at their restaurants, I think that would be key. Every restaurant, if I think about sidewalk cafes, everyone is not already big enough for the chairs they have sometimes, so if you add a bunch of dogs. So if we want to, I would support it if we make sure that restaurants don't have to accept the dogs. Okay, so then they would each apply for permission, or whatever. But if we could try to do that for this limited warm weather we have, I don't know how fast the state works on these things. And then we can revisit this obviously in the fall when the sidewalks cafes are closed to see if it worked and what the issues were. Alderman Braithwaite, Councilmember Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm definitely fine with supporting this with the understanding that a restaurant has to apply or opt in. I guess we can say it in multiple different ways. But my curious question, I haven't researched this, so in areas that they are denying a customer service, right? It gets real loosey-goosey for me. So I want to be real mindful of what we're saying yes to, and if anybody has any good examples. So restaurateur, it could be a wait staff. Is it a manager? Let's just be clear with that. And then what is that consequences when the cute little poodle is yapping or whatever the case may be, or a customer's complaining? Like, what's that protocol going to look like? Because, just like the issue with the beaches, like somebody has to enforce that. Is it a police officer that's coming? Is it a fine that's given? So, I don't know, Councilman Kelly.
Each restaurant will, obviously, they want clientele. They don't want people to not come.
I agree.
So it's like on your own private property, the dog barking, it's a nuisance to others surrounding it, and then obviously you go beyond just the restaurant's, the proprietor's decision on how to handle it.
Right. I won't use the person who gave a perfect example that her dog is better behaved than some of the but the point is, let's just be clear with that when we rise up, so there's no confusion if a dog's barking or whatever the case may be.
Examples of some where the variance
Councilmember, can you come to the microphone because we are live
All right.
meeting so people
Thank
can
you.
hear you?
Thank you, Madam
There
Chair.
are a few examples from some other, I didn't have time to go, but from a few other states and cities that also have variances to their state health code, their state codes.
Sure.
And they're pretty lengthy, what you have to sign off and agree to in terms of safety and health protocol. So
Right.
it's a pretty big commitment.
Yes, yes, yes,
And I
yes.
think some public education even to restaurant owners to say they can get a variance if they want to. And so if someone comes with their dog and says, well, the place down the street has one, they can say,
Yeah.
I opted not to get the variance to have dogs, right? And
Can
they,
I ask, in those places, is there signage that say dogs are welcome that's, yeah,
If
Thank
I
you.
might add,
yes.
so this is not just a state code through the adoption of the FDA code. This is also a city code violation. In our city codes, there are a number of codes that disallows dogs at restaurants. So when we are having this conversation, we should also put that into consideration that we'll have to annul those codes that disallow dogs at restaurants and outdoor cafes. So I just wanted to mention that. And Councilmember Fleming, you want this implemented as soon as possible. I don't know how feasible that would be because we'll have to create applications. We actually have to get clarification from the state in regards to the 1 million and the variance to see what their final statement
Right.
would be. And we'll have to set parameters and measures and what have you. So.
Well, I'm not saying like bring it back at the next Human Services meeting. I just know we deal with a limited amount of time that we can eat outside here. So I was saying that if we can do the legal leg to see what we need to do legally, that we start working on it, right? So I don't mean to say like, I know this is going to be tomorrow. If there are some other examples of other cities and probably Chicago in terms of what those regulations, the contracts or whatever we have people signing off on, it seems like we can figure that out. I just, again, through COVID, and I know a lot of this was state sponsored, we were able to roll out some things we hadn't done before pretty fast. All right, I want to go to Councilmember Reed and then, can you have Ravel speak first, do you mind? And then Reed.
I think, Councilmember Fleming, you were starting to address the issues I was wondering about is how quickly can we move this forward so that we can take advantage of the summer months? Are there, can we call it a pilot and not have to amend everything in sight? So, I just, and we don't want to have to wait for another month to come back to Human Services either. So if we could sort of outline a pathway forward.
If I can chime in on that, because I've heard the discussion, I've read the memo, and it seems like the concerns that we have are, one, whether or not this jeopardizes our status with IDPH, and I think that's an email that we can get to IDPH and say, hey, is this an issue? And so that shouldn't be too concerning. Director Ogbo is correct in mentioning that there are, and I think he put it in the memo as well, that there are ordinances that we have on the books that, conflict with this, and I think we just, as we write, if you look at the closing statement in a number of ordinances, it'll say anything that conflicts with this is now nullified. So we don't have to, it would be great to go and find everything in the code, but we can implement this as a pilot or something else to get it going this summer without having to do too much heavy lifting. And the application, Director Ogbo mentioned that, his department have to come up with an application. I think, again, as Chairman Fleming said, Chicago does this. I think we could model our ordinance, at least the pilot, after the Chicago model because it exists. I think there are actually restaurants that I won't name it because I don't want to get them in trouble, but I have a favorite place on Chicago Avenue that I go to, and they have a place where you can hook your dog up, and I sit there with my dog and have lunch sometimes. And so I think this business also operates in Chicago. So our businesses are used to the at least Chicago model, so we can take off, use their application. I think that solves all of the issues that Director Ogbo raised as barriers.
All right, and then I'm going to go to Councilmember Braithwaite and then Kelly, and then we'll see if we can kind of wrap this one up.
Yeah, this is my last question, comment. So similar to apartments that have, they're allowed to be specific in terms of size of dog and breeds of dogs that they don't allow. In the research that you've done, are there provisions like that say? No, so it would be, it would basically be any dog, and the owner still has the discretion to say, I don't want your pit bull here, I don't want your Rottweiler here. And
So those are things that we will have to review. We'll
that's why
also
I'm
have to-
asking the questions right now, because I could see where it's going to happen.
Yes, those are things that we have to review. We have to review the space, how many dogs will be allowed, if there are going to be designated areas for dogs. So there are a number of things that we will have to consider before the implementation of this. And not that just that, to verify from IDPH regarding the state statute and the variance. I think that's very, very important. So.
Good
Claire,
stuff.
I'm sorry, Claire, Councilmember Kelly, and then I'm going to go to Burns, and then I'm going to try to move us along here.
So just, I think there's a few misunderstandings. So one thing is, this is a variance, just like like when you have a planned development where it's going against zoning. So it doesn't mean we have to change our code at all. It's that each restaurant applies, and I've given some samples of those forms applying for variance. So we don't really have to revise our health code. They apply for a variance to it, the same way. It's just like zoning, but for dogs. And I have provided some samples. So there are, many cities have done this very successfully. And again, they have all that figured out in terms of, how they handle dogs and barking and dogs that are not, friendly. So that's all been worked out many times. And so we don't have to do this from scratch.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns.
I just want to see if the section of the state code that we're referring to, was that in the packet? Because I keep scrolling through it. It's not? Okay. If I can,
Yes.
I mean, I can look it up, but if it's easy enough to send it along,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be now, but just.
So we adopt the FDA code through the state. So all certified health departments use the FDA code. And here in Evanston, we adopt that FDA code, which the state has approved. The reason being is that the FDA code provides more of an up-to-date information in regards to science and inspections. Prior to that, our inspection codes were outdated. It took 10 years or so for them to update our food code. So that's why the state adopted the FDA code, and we've adopted the FDA code subsequently.
All right, so it sounds like consensus here is we are interested in moving this forward, even as just a pilot program, looking for more direction from our law department. Obviously, Director Ogbo, whatever you can do to, and working with law, kind of figuring this out with the variances, if we can kind of cut and paste Chicago to get us started. Now, the only issue is, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're still in COVID, although everyone's, out and about. So we potentially, this meeting would be again in July. I think it would be on that Tuesday after the holiday. So it would be Wednesday because we're close. Okay. So there's always a chance that we don't meet in July because of the holidays. And so I guess if the committee is good with that, I think our direction is to start moving forward to get this moving as a pilot for this summer. And maybe we can bypass, if this committee doesn't meet, we can just take it right to City Council. So it's not held up waiting for this committee.
Yeah, I would like to.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we should
So
make
we're not going to take a vote because of this discussion, but that is our direction to the staff.
Okay.
All right. HS4, food truck and revenue in Evanston. Councilmember Reed requested Human Services Committee review and discuss food trucks in Evanston. There was a memo in the packet. Councilmember Reed, do you want to speak to this?
Yes. Again, I appreciate the memo, Director Ogbo. I think it is a missed opportunity that we don't allow for both food trucks and mobile food vendors to operate on our lakefront. Currently, the code disallows food trucks operating on our lakefront, and I think we should make an effort to allow for both food trucks and like the hand push carts to operate right on the lakefront. And I see the memo says that we don't receive sales tax revenue currently from our food trucks. And I'm wondering, I don't know if we have the appropriate staff here to answer this question, but it would seem like we would be able to charge sales tax to our food truck vendors or capture some ongoing revenue. It just seems like it's our local code that doesn't charge sales tax. So maybe Attorney George, are you able to opine on that?
I would have to do research on that.
Okay. And Director Obo, is this something you're familiar with?
Well, historically, we have not charged for
Sales tax, but it doesn't seem like we're prohibited from your knowledge, we're not prohibited from charging sales tax, are we?
It doesn't sound like we are.
Okay.
What we charge is just a fee.
Yeah, just the $500.
A license fee
fee.
here in Evanston, and historically, we have not charged any sales taxes, or have we benefited or received any revenue from the sales that they make from their food in the food trucks.
Certainly.
Councilmember Ravel? Oh, sorry, are you finished, Councilmember
I
Reed?
will cede my
Okay. Well, I just had a question, wondering why historically we've not allowed the food trucks at the beaches and the parks.
Well, on the contrary, that the city can make a decision whether to allow food trucks or not at the lakefront. We've had previously a number of concession companies at our lakefront where they had push carts and I believe even a food truck at one point. So the city can make that decision whether to allow food trucks at our lakefront or at our beaches.
So would we, if we allowed it, would we have a limit on the number of food trucks probably, or?
So that would be something that we will have to determine. We will have to flush that out and make a decision as to how many.
Or maybe the companies would reserve spaces for their food trucks so that, we'd spread them out over the community.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, that instead of having them congregate in one space, just to spread them apart. But like I said, it's something that will have to be reviewed and a determination will have to be made as to how many trucks will be allowed per beach.
Okay, I have a number of lights on, so I think that Mr. Hemingway would like to speak maybe to the beach part, then I'll go to Braithwaite, then I have Burns and Reed again.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Ravel, with direct response to you, as far as the lakefront, there is a reference, and again, this is a reference in the Lakefront Master Plan that talks about commercialization of the lake. And again, that's just, I'm giving you all a little more background of, you asked the question of why. And in previous years prior to 2019, the city did have a vendor that, we put an RFP out in which a vendor successfully bid, and then they paid the city a fee based upon the revenues. So just giving you a little background on some of that from a department perspective. Thank you.
Councilmember Braithwaite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So are you talking about the little small stand by the lagoon?
Yes, sir. They were able to operate out of that location, as well as they had carts, but they were the selected city vendor to operate on the lakefront, and so the city received compensation for them to do that.
Is there any reason why we couldn't bring back that proposal to just open it up for an Evanston-based restaurant to have first opportunity to serve out of there? And if not, then what would be the process to allow for that?
Well, we could use the template of the RFP that was used previously to allow someone. What the plan specifically speaks to, and again, the plan is 2008, so take that for what it is. But the plan speaks to like no kitchen space on the lakefront or no restaurant with a kitchen.
So we'd have to
And
change
so
that.
those are, that's what's in the lakefront master plan. Again, it is whatever the will of this body,
Right.
you get to determine that.
Right.
But I know you adopted that plan in '08, and so that was in existence. And so there was some practice of
Mm-hmm.
the lack of commercialization. So that's all.
I don't know if this requires referral, but it's just a thought, Director, that you might be able to bring back in a real fast period of time. You serve food out of a lot of our community spaces, right? And I see the lakefront as an extension. So Crown has a community kitchen. Fleetwood has a community kitchen, and there's probably a few more that I could name. I guess my point is, just use your best judgment if everybody's okay with that as a direction, and just if there's an opportunity to sell food out of that area, no different that we do at James Park, it would be great to be able to provide that space to, and I would prioritize an Evanston-based business to be able to sell it. I think what's changed and what's helped to open up my mind is it's COVID. So like everybody, like it flipped the whole planet upside down, right? And there are people who know how to make money. There are places where we're losing money. It makes sense that we use this as an opportunity to use money out of space. I'm gonna switch gears and get back to Chair to this proposal. Like in general, I'm for it. Councilman Reed, my only thought process is to give access and preference to Evanston-based businesses. What I'm concerned about is, somebody coming from outside with a very low operational cost. Does that really impact like our whole market? I'm not going to make that argument right now, but I think if there are opportunities for Evanston-based businesses to make it easier for them to sell food outside of their establishments, like that should be our primary focus versus anyone coming from another municipality that doesn't abide by the same health codes, where we don't have a way of tying back Johnny's hot dogs when he's gone. You don't have a way to track who he's feeding when Johnny's hot dogs are gone, and then we have a bunch of people that are sick versus some of our other restaurants who are currently doing that. That would be my first preference, and then absolutely if we can collect tax revenue from the people who are currently having storefront, having a place here, I think that would be my priority if we're going to roll this out as a pilot. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go to, I know you have your light on, but Burns hasn't spoken yet, so I'm going to go to Burns and then Reed.
Yeah, we can go to Councilmember Reed just so I don't break up the flow of dialogue.
Yeah.
I know you want to respond, so I'll go next.
Yeah, so particularly, Johnny's Hot Dogs comes in, they have to register, they have to provide a license to the city, so we would be able to track them. If they're operating in Evanston, part of the licensing process would say you understand what our local health code is and you're going to comply with our local health code. So that certainly is going to be the case here. And also, yeah, I totally agree with you. We should make sure that we're giving a preference for Evanston-based businesses and enterprises, and MWE, all of that. We should make sure we make a preference for that. But I also wouldn't want us to cut off opportunities from more established. I think Chicago, for example, has more of a food truck scene. In fact, we don't have a food truck scene here in Evanston. We have, like La Cosanita, who has a food truck that occasionally operates at events. But I think if we can bring in some of the vendors who are in Chicago or other places that are used to operating, that can help us get the ball rolling a bit faster. And particularly as this is a pilot, I think the first thing would be to really just look at, what kind of revenue can this bring in if it's done right? What are some of the barriers or some of the issues that may arise just by allowing these food trucks? And then I think down the line we can tailor it to make sure that we're encouraging Evanston businesses to get what I believe, as Alderman Revelle said, I'm totally in line with this. We should have a limited number of licenses that can be issued per year. I think in certain places you have to, your license can lapse if you're not meeting a certain sales volume, right? If folks don't like what you're selling and you're not selling stuff, then your license lapses and somebody else can come in and claim that. And so I think that's the kind of model that we should, I think DC has something. I know DC has when I was there, pretty robust food truck scene. And so I think if we can get that happening at our lakefront, that'd be great. And I hope we can move this forward similar to the dog proposal so we can get it implemented for this summer, particularly as next summer we already have the council is committed to looking at making the beaches free next summer, so we should start looking at how can we bring in revenue and what is viable. I mean, now I saw that the best year, just with the pure $500 licensing fee, we made $10,000 some odd dollars is what I recall. And so how can we, make that $100,000, or more. So I'd love to get this rolling this year so we can begin to get some of that data and fine tune it for next year when we may really need this revenue.
All right, Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, what I was going to say has already been shared by Councilmember Reed, but I just wanted to say, for the sake of parity, I would imagine most places do charge sales tax for food trucks. I know there's strong, restaurant lobby is stronger in different areas, but I would imagine just for the sake of parity that we would also, getting some revenue from our food truck owners would not be, unduly burdensome. I think that's, so I just wanted to say, I think that makes sense to me. Unless I'm not thinking about it clearly, I don't know if that's a
No,
question of
I mean, I
economic
think we all
development.
agree with the
Yeah.
tax. Like, the question is, how do you collect that tax from somebody that has like a little, what do you call those things? You like a swipe or a
Square.
That's
A
the greatest
square.
way. If they're swiping and squaring, then we definitely have records that will produce the sales tax. But if they're using cash, then it's a bit harder, yes.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have multiple devices on your phone to cheat the system. Hence my concern with like outside vendors. But
All
I
right,
think
so-
that would be.
No,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, and thank you so much, Bubs. I think that that's an important note. And so these are the things like that I try to stress on is I love the wonderful ideas, and now is the time to act on them. But just so we're mindful that once we let it out the gate, it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. So let's just be clear with the direction of staff. Like, if we're going to allow someone from coming outside, great opportunity for somebody who comes from outside of Evanston. But in terms of our residents that are here in our businesses, let's make sure that before we allow that it's a clear way that I have a cell phone and I could have multiple devices that I could run off of different numbers. Let's make sure that it's like Trump, I don't want to even say Trump type, but and I'm referring to a card game, not the president, that we have like a clear mechanism to get that sales tax. Because I think at the end of the day, Councilman Reed, that's what you're looking for, to generate revenue, and we want to be precise with that. Thank you.
All right, so here's another proposal, not to stray too far, but I think you're right, Alderman. We want the sales tax, but there's ways people have figured out not to pay sales tax. I think if we're going to do it at the lakefront, we need to have designated spaces like we tried to do at James Park, where we have food truck spaces that nobody ever really came to. But we'd have designated spaces where food trucks are allowed to park. I mean, this might be a pain in the tail, but we can schedule them so folks aren't fighting over those spaces. But also, because it is premium space and because the sales tax might be a little bit wonky if we're trying to kick this off right now, we could have premium parking. So if I have my food truck and I want a license and I want to sell at the beach, my license is $1,000. We could make it a premium price for the license while we figure out the sales tax things. We don't want to lose sales tax, but we also want to gain revenue, right? So if we're charging you $1,000, $1,200 to come park at the beach, and you're at Clark Street, we're probably going to lose a couple dollars in sales tax. We've gained you parking there. And we could even stagger that if you want to be a prime time space at a prime time beach, then it's a higher cost, right? So I think there's a way we could maybe get this going. I do know that we struggle with our Evanston food trucks from what I've seen. We don't have that many. I don't know why that is. And when we've tried to get them, when I've tried to get Mr. Hemingway to get them at Ninth Ward events, they want to like guarantee that we're going to have a million people eating, which I can't guarantee you, right? But if they are smart and they know what our beach population is, even people who are riding bikes who are not at the beach, like myself, will stop at a food truck. I remember we had the thing, Alderman Braithwaite, with the lady in the hot dog stand, and there was some other issues there. I mean, I think it would be great to bring a local person to do that. I think she's moved out of town. She used to be in my ward, but I do think, if we want to do this premium pricing and maybe a little bit cheaper for Evanston residents to give them an incentive. But I think if I had a food truck, I don't know what they do in Chicago in terms of the beach, but if I had a food truck, I would happily pay to park it at Clark Street on a Saturday. And I would pay you quite a bit, especially if I'm not paying any sales tax to you, right? And so I think there's a way we can do this and monetize on it for this year, and then again, approve upon it for the years after. I don't know what the parking situation is. It's always sticky at the beach, but I feel like we can carve out one space. You would get your same, and I know you have staff who has to do this, but you would get your same fee for the license, but then we could charge them a kind of a beach parking pass kind of a scenario.
Yeah, I think that's,
And maybe we just want to put hours on it, right? And again, because we have staff limitations and people we don't want to have a food truck fight where somebody's parked in the space longer than they're supposed to, but maybe we just put hours on it. Maybe it's a Thursday through Monday operation and it's, 12 to 5 or whatever it is, right? I mean, I think we can make it work for folks, but then also not exacerbate Ike's team and kicking up a whole bunch of new licenses and then, our poor little beach token collectors who now have to, tell you to move your food truck out the space or something, right? I mean, we don't want to make it a horrible experience.
We have to provide an attractant to the food truck. As you mentioned, Councilmember Fleming, the issue that we've had over the years is attracting these food trucks to our events. They would rather pay what we call the temporary food permit rather than getting a license here in Evanston. Currently, we have 3 active licenses in Evanston, and that speaks volumes. And most of the food trucks that come to Evanston are from Chicago because there is a market for it there in Chicago. So if this is something that we are going to move forward with, we have to figure out ways to attract and sell it to those food truck companies to come to Evanston, because that's one of the issues that we've had for many years, attracting them.
But we've not ever had them at the beach. So
No.
we're trying to
That is
attract
the
them to come to
attraction.
James Park to get some random, Little League people to buy from them, right? We've never offered them the opportunity to go where we know there's a mass of people. And so I see that your temporary license is $111, which is kind of a weird number. But there's a way we can work with that, right? Maybe you have a temporary beach license, and every time you want to come and park at our beach, you sign up for a space and you pay this license each time you come. I don't know. I'm not a food licenser, but I think there's a way of which we can make this work. Councilmember Reed, maybe you can bring some more examples forward.
And I'll just say, I think your idea, for this year, having just a straight licensing fee and a parking fee makes it simpler for this year. I think with the data we could collect is we ask people, what was your sales volume? And that's a part of getting, so we can figure out what is successful, what's not successful. And I think in the future, what I was suggesting is that we do base your ability to operate based on the sales tax revenue that you're generating. That way, if you're cheating us and you're not giving us our sales tax, then likely the business that is going to be generating more, which means that they get that premium,
Right.
time and space.
Well, we'll have all fall and winter to kind of figure out those things.
Sure.
If we're trying
Yeah,
to get
right,
this
right,
launched
right.
for August or whatever we're aiming for. Councilmember Burns.
So if I understand, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilmember Burns, and then we'll try to wrap
Not
up.
just, because I don't think I've finished this full thought. When I said parity, I meant parity, just make sure there's parity between brick and mortar restaurants. I don't think I've named it brick and mortar and food trucks, because what we've seen in other markets is that once you start to expand the food truck program, there's a feeling like they have an unfair advantage. I don't think that might be the case here, because we're just talking about it along the lakefront and not necessarily downtown. I don't think we currently allow food trucks downtown, but it's just I just want to make sure I was clear on that point, that we should be just being fair.
Yeah, I'm not going to, I would not support food trucks downtown, right? That takes away from the whole clientele. And then again, if we're going to do Evanston or whatever base, we just cut them, they pay less, right? So anyway, there's probably a way we can think about this through even our Park Evanston app, right? Maybe a food truck wants to park there in our designated space. We can charge them some, $50 an hour, whatever it is, right? So there's a way we can even maybe do it so that it's not so laborsome on our staff, and we have these specific spaces.
So if I understand correctly, and please forgive me, the direction is for us to implement a type of pilot program come summer this year, then figure out the sales taxes later in the year. Is that the direction?
I think so. I think are we all think, Faith, where
Yeah.
you think it would be okay to work with parking, figure out a space for trucks to be, and we can figure out some kind of temporary day license or something that they can get to park there. And this would be, July, August, September. I don't know when the beach is closed. And again, I'm also thinking it would make sense for us to not have it every day. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the beach, but
I
that
think
we have it.
especially on the free days. would
Right,
be
but I'm just
great.
saying, if we did
Yeah.
like Thursday through Monday, that way it's controllable for everybody, and we're not having our staff and our policing out there managing a whole other kind of disaster of situation. What's your concern? Director Hemingway has a concern.
Again, don't want to come off not being supportive, because that's not the case. But just this past weekend, we ran off a vendor this weekend who doesn't have a license, and I want to, on the operational side, it's got to be, and I think, I can, as well as the Parks and Rec staff, we can work very closely together to know who it is and share that with EPD. But I had to call EPD this weekend because we had an unauthorized vendor. on the lakefront, just Saturday. And just, that's all I want to
But
say.
we can, again, so we have all these hang tags and all kind of
Sure.
things and
Yeah.
I don't know how much those things cost to make. I feel like we are a smart city. If I buy license on a Saturday for the beach, there's some kind of big old thing I got to put in my window, right? I mean, I feel like we can make, and then if they're also paying through Park Evanston to park there, I mean, I think that there's ways we can make this happen. And he'd much rather pay our fee, I imagine, than me run off and can't come back again.
Yeah, and we do issue decals or posters
Okay.
for our license.
Approved list.
Yep.
That's a good idea.
And so which we could easily give to EPD for enforcement or parking for enforcement.
And then just last note that not just discussing food trucks, but allowing for those push carts that, kind of in Chicago, they're known as like the elote people or whatever to push or the paletta or whatever they're called, folks to be able to push their carts along the lakefront as well.
But they also got to get a permit.
But they got to get a permit and everything. But just to be clear, we're not just talking about food trucks.
Right.
It's also allowing a limited number of these push carts to operate, which is likely what Lawrence had to chase off. I doubt somebody pulled up their branded food truck and just tried to park it. It's likely a push cart person.
All right, Burns for the last comment.
Yes, thank you.
No, I just wanted to say, I think we shouldn't delay starting research on or exploring sales tax.
No. I was just saying I want the
clear.
staff right now to be
Yeah.
working on getting these things up and going. And then, it's only going to be warm for 2 more days. So I think staff can get this going so we can get the sales going and then we can work with them.
Because I'm not entirely certain regarding the sales taxes and how much work that will
Yeah, and
take,
that's not your
since I-
department.
yeah,
So we
since
have
I
other
don't
folks
have
who
the
should know
expertise
that
on it, I'll
information. We
refer
can bring in
to-
Paul Zalmazak and those folks.
Right.
Paul and his team can start, right, making connections with those food trucks now. Yeah. Okay, so you have some general direction from us? Again, this committee might not meet in July, and so as you are ready, we would appreciate this come back to City Council for approval. Thank you.
I'm happy to work with you and Alderman Fleming or whoever to.
And Alderman is not working on this one, but
Okay,
thank you.
happy to work with you. I make
Thank
this
you for
happen.
volunteering me. All right, last is HS5, which is the AMITA Behavioral Health Update. So this was just something I asked for. Again, no hierarchy, but for the new folks, we have a contract with AMITA. Alderman Ravel and I have spent quite a bit of time looking at it and following their numbers in our alternatives to 911 committee. So I just kind of wanted to see what their numbers are looking like now. We pay them, is it 100? How much is it?
$143,333.
All right. And it was initially for a crisis line, but now it's kind of evolved into other mental health services. I know that the staff there has done a lot in the Latino, Spanish-speaking community, which I appreciate. I think what I would love to see us think through in this contract, because I know for a while their call volume was down on the crisis line, and I think they've been working on that. But I hear a lot from parents who have, school age and high school children, particularly middle school and high school children, and they cannot find mental health therapists for their kids, particularly parents who don't have insurance, and the school does not have a mental health clinic, unfortunately. And so I would love it if AMITA can think through, it just as they did, reaching out to the Latinx community, doing some kind of targeted outreach to families to let them know this line is available and that they have clinicians who can work with young people. And then as well, being able to talk about what long-term support would look like for young people under our contract. Because I think that, we're going to unfortunately continue to see a rise in those support services needed given the pandemic. And I think it would be great if we can utilize this contract a little more in that space so that students can have the support they need as they're, transitioning back to school.
Sounds good.
And I would like that information back to this committee.
Sounds
Or
good.
in an email to me is fine if we don't need to make a presentation. Does anyone else have a question about this contract or need more information? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so those were our items for discussion. Do we have anything for communication or any referrals we need to make? All right, so I will email you all, myself and staff, about taking the consensus for the July meeting, if we want to have that or not. As far as I understand, we have 2 items, which would be the dashboard and the handle with care that we still have in this committee, as well as any pending police complaints if they're ready and come to this committee. So we can talk about all 3 of those things at another human
Can we
service.
just do that at the discretion of the chair? I figure as stuff comes in, you can.
Yeah,
let
I'm
us
just saying,
know.
I'm saying right now, this is what is potentially on the agenda, so we don't have enough to, necessarily have a meeting in July. But as those things change, I'll be in touch with you all. We can decide closer to, based on the agenda items we have. Yes.
One question is, does Human Services have to meet on Mondays? It seems as though this is a committee that could meet some other day of the week, so we're not loading.
Councilmember Reed, you
all right.
are stepping on a landmine.
All right, I
Right.
see the faces already, so I
I mean, I
don't
think
care.
it doesn't have to, but it does. Our staff are used to it. We don't have council usually on that night.
Okay,
So, but we also don't have to meet every month if we don't have agenda items.
right, okay. I see the faces,
So-
it's fine, not a big deal. Happy to be here on
Nick,
Monday.
Nick, your next turn. I'm with you for the next one. All right, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second? Do I have to take a roll?
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite? I am an aye. Alderman Burns?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.